today, if you talk about today, we have a very large company that are having the new world as they collect and process vast quantities of data from economics, from e-commerce, from the digital assistance, from digital services and other sources. Like you have seen this example, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. At the same time, we have to connect with AI. Artificial intelligence is basically amplifying human ingenuity. And this is the engine for driving the latest technology disruptions. One school of thought which is coming up is telling us that over the next few decades, artificial intelligence will eclipse biological human intelligence, but we will also become artificially intelligent. Gradually, our biological bodies and brains will be replaced and enhanced by devices, and humanity will be altered beyond anything we can imagine. So these are the extreme thoughts which is coming up on the AI side. So this kind of a webinar series is to prepare everybody and anybody to be ready to adopt this AI in their lifestyle. These kind of webinars will talk about the various possibilities and the challenges we are going to face due to the emergence of the new technologies. We have a host, we have experts, they have agreed to contribute for this webinar, and they are from various big organizations, and a couple of experts are from US and all, and they are actually going to help everybody to understand how AI is going to affect our lifestyle, how AI is going to affect the way we work, how AI is going to tell us that how to behave and how to grow. So with this, we are starting this webinar series. It's a 7-week we have to devote for this webinar series. 14 speakers have been they have agreed to contribute in this webinar series. But before going into the details of this webinar, to hand over the thing to the expert of today, Mr. Amol, I would like to just give you a few glimpses about the CDAC Patna. So I just talk about a little bit in brief about CDAC Patna. CDAC Patna is the 12th research center has been established by Government of India. It comes from the Ministry of Electronics and IT. It is a part of the Center for Development Advanced Computing, which is headquartered at Pune, and it has started in 1988, and it is a premier R&D institution for designing, development, and deployment of world-class electronics and ICT solutions for economics and human advancement. This is the youngest out of the 12 centers. Patna is the youngest center, and altogether in CDAC we have almost 2,800 scientists working today on various technologies. The major thrust area for this CDAC is basically high performance computing. For the purpose we have established ourselves, and back in 1988, and the first supercomputer have been developed in 1991, and the series, it is called Param supercomputers, and the series is still going on, and we are having the latest numbers, hundreds of supercomputers we have designed and developed over the period of time. Artificial and multilingual computing was another area of work where we used to have a lot of applications and technologies. Professional electronics, we have health informatics, a lot of products are there. Cyber security and cyber forensics, software technologies, e-governance, in geoinformatics, we have a lot of applications. Recently, we have added to blockchain technologies. We are going to have our own blockchain system. 5G, IoT, ST. These are some of the areas, and all those informations or the knowledge what we gain working on those technologies, we convert to the courses and run to the education and training. And all the CDAC centers having small or big training centers through which we run a very prestigious program called PG Diploma programs, and it's 900 award programs at NSQF level 8 programs, and that is very popular across the world. So that is again a kind of things we are doing. And this is the new mission which has been crafted. And these are the 6 areas where we have started working on. One is the exascale computing mission, microprocessor and professional electronics mission. We're going to have our own microprocessor, India microprocessors. Quantum computing mission is another area. AI and language is another area which we are contributing a lot. Internet of everything, dependable and secure computing mission is another mission. And Gen Next applied computing mission is comprised of healthcare, then education, smart cities, e-governance. Everything is part of that Gen Next applied computing mission. If you talk about Patna activities, we have 3 major areas we have been identified to work on. One is the cyber security and cyber forensic. Another one is the AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the third one is embedded and IoT devices. Using these technologies, we have to work on these thirst areas. Tourism and heritage, health is an important aspect, education, agriculture. We are defining a lot of creating a lot of projects around the agriculture side, e-governance, smart cities, and of course the security. Why we are conducting this webinar? It is a part of our vision and directions. Is basically to collaborate with anybody and everybody, and we want to create innovation-driven development. We also want to do interdisciplinary research, knowledge sharing. We are into knowledge sharing with 11 independent CDAC labs, which is already having 3 decades of experience. We want to have a future mindset, and we want to become emotionally agile to work on the various technologies and the various solutions. And of course, we don't want to only contribute to innovations. We want to, but of the owner of the innovations. So that is our vision and directions. If you talk about AI, machine learning, and deep learning, we have identified various areas in which we have to work. If you can see that it encompassing all the areas where the currently people are working on AI and machine learning side. Okay, and we also have going to have a facility at Patna, a scalable AI supercomputer at Patna. It's going to be 5 petaflop system, and that is going to be the first in Eastern India. And we'll have this with all AI libraries and SDKs would be the part of that particular system. Okay, and this is in conjunction with the bigger supercomputer which has been established at Pune called Param Siddhi AI, which is the first India's first 210 AI petaflop scalable AI supercomputer. This is the Param Siddhi, and also we have our Director General is nominated as a founding member of the Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence, a world body. Multiple, almost 30 countries are contributing to that, and they are defining this the way artificial intelligence is going to take the shape. So this is also very important initiatives from the CDAC side. If you talk about the artificial intelligence at CDAC Patna, we have already created a center of excellence, which will align ourselves with the national strategy and the AI ecosystem, and create innovative AI-enabled solutions that enrich and augment the quality of the human experience. So already we are creating AI forums, AI events, creating AI events, lectures on those areas. We're also creating a R&D ecosystem where people from different fields can contribute and come to join hands together, and they can contribute. And also we have to concentrate on more prevailing aspect on AI ethics and the policies. These are some of the areas on which we have already started working on, identified areas. Already our research team is working on these areas. And this is one area in which we are contributing, we are developing a crowdsourcing platform for macro entrepreneurial venture in Bihar. That is again one area on which we have started working. This is all about CDAC Patna. and the CDAC as a whole. So we are there to work for the national building, and whenever new technologies are there, we are exercising ourselves to understand the technologies and implement those technologies for the benefit of the people. So this is our objective, and we would like to incorporate more and more people into this system, and that's why this series is there. Uh, this series will give you a little idea about the AI and the data science, but not give you the very deep thoughts. In order to have a deep dive into the system, we have also created various courses, and a couple of courses which is run by CDAC Patna as well on online mode. It's a 6-hour program. It's two programs we have launched, one 600-hour programs, one being e-diploma in AI, artificial intelligence. It's a 600-hour program. We start from the mathematics. It's a very comprehensive program meant for the people who want to go deep dive into the system, into the AI side. Another program is big data analytics, AI in big data analytics. Again, it's a 600-hour programs. So that will give you a fair idea that how to work on the data, and how to get the intelligence out of the data. So these are the two programs which has been launched by CDAC. Applications are already been on. So if anybody who would like to go for deep diving to these domains are requested to go for these kind of things. With the given thoughts, I would like to invite the speaker for today, Mr. Amol. And Saket, over to you for introduction to the speaker today. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your precise and insightful thought of importance of AI and data science, and briefly touching about our roadmap of CDAC Patna. Thank you very much, sir. So moving forward, we will start with our expert talk, AI and open source. And to briefly explain about his profile, he is STSM and Chief Architect for as a part of Digital Technology Labs ISL. He is IBM Senior Certified Solution Architect, Open Group Master Certified Architect, TOGAF Certified Senior IT Architect working with IBM Software Labs. He is IBM Master Inventor and filed more than 50 patents in areas such as cognitive, artificial intelligence, cloud, big data, and Internet of Things. Amol sir has built breakthrough open source assets in code patterns, service solutions strategy that has had a transformative effect in the organization across India. He has demonstrated technical skills to revolutionize industry, customers, and government agencies. He's an outstanding technologist with a track record of leading innovations across industry. He has demonstrated outstanding contribution to innovation by contributing to patents across around 50 patents, Academy of Technology, and is also a board member for evaluating IBM Master Inventors and member of multiple patent review councils. He is IBM recognized speaker and has presented white papers in regional technical exchanges, external forums, and has been invited in various universities, colleges, companies to conduct workshops on cognitive, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, social, mobile, and portal technologies. This is our great honor to have you on board, sir. Now I would request our expert speaker, Mr. Amol sir, to please carry on with his talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Saket. Aditya sir, thank you so much for providing this platform and your brief informative talk. I think that was very, we were able to know what's happening in CDAC Patna. So thank you for providing that insights. Without further ado, I will maybe start what I want to talk. The topic AI and open source, one of the topic that is very near to my heart. So Saket, can I share my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about open source and data science. And as most of you who are working in this particular area would be aware that open source is one of the backbone of be it machine learning models and AI at the same point of time. And why it is so, there is a background behind it. So if you can see the screen, the journey of AI is not new. So it started way back in 1940, wherein like there was a concept of Turing machine. Not sure how many of you have heard about it. So Turing machine was the first, I would say, a machine learning AI model that was developed, though it was like in a manual mode at that point of time, but there were experiments and they were able to prove that it works. And as we progress from 1940 to 1950, there was a lot of research that was happening. As we move forward and we come to 1970, still there was a research that was happening. ELIZA was the one that was another bot that was created based on some kind of a machine learning algorithms. 1970 to 80 is called as a first AI winter, because during that time all the research that was happening in the field of AI was restrained. There was no research that happened during that particular period for whatever reason. Some individual felt that this is like not going to make any sense to the world. At the same point of time, there was another view that this is going to have a very difficulty to mankind race. We don't know the fact today, but that's why one of the reason that we saw AI winter, the first AI winter. And then after that, we started progressing again between 1982 to 1993. There is a second AI winter. Again, there was no research, no fundings that were provided to AI projects because people were not seeing value, and somewhere there was a perception that AI is going to kill mankind. Or like maybe if you have seen a couple of movies from the Hollywood wherein like the robots are taking the entire world, the entire mankind to ransom. So those were the reasons for AI Winter 1 and AI Winter 2. Now, as we move forward, in 1997, you might have heard about Deep Blues, wherein it beat Kasparov, who was the chess champion at that particular point of time. And if you think about chess is a very complex game, and there are multiple moves that needs to be there. So as a part of this particular exercise, what was done is the machine was able to see all the games of Kasparov, whatever he has played before. It was able to analyze that, and analyzing those, after that he was able to beat Kasparov. As we move forward, in 2011, Watson, which was an IBM product, wins a Jeopardy, which was a quiz competition. So there were questions that were asked to Jeopardy, and none of the questions were, the Jeopardy was not, the Watson was not aware about those questions. So based on the learning that it has done, it was able to identify and it was able to answer those questions. In 2016, we have seen AlphaGo. So not sure how many of you have heard about it. So checkers is a game which is supposed to be 200 times complex than chess, and the number of moves that are there, in AlphaGo, they are much higher than whatever there are in chess. And in this particular scenario in 2016, what has happened is AlphaGo was or the bot was not taught about all the previous moves that were played by the defending champion. The bot was provided with structured, semi-structured data. Based on that, the bot did analysis, and AlphaGo was able to defeat the then defending champion. As we progressed, we have seen that in 2018, 2019, IBM came up with IBM Debater, which is another product which was able to debate with one of the well-known debater in the world, and he was not able to win, but there were very good arguments that happened. So if you look at the journey from 1940 to till today, there is a lot of work that has been done. Now, if we look at the work that has been done till 2000, there was a lot of research, there was a lot of theory that was put into place. So that is not new. Today, what is happening is we have started implementing AI use cases. So a couple of years back, it was thought that like maybe 2015, 2016, everyone was thinking that AI is going to be used only for sci-fi things, something like autonomous car. And it's not going to be useful for, as such, solving social problems, solving mankind problems. And that notion is getting little bit abstract at this point of time. So we are moving further, and AI is today solving the real world problem. Just to give a couple of examples, Texas was having lot of leakages. So Texas in US being a very big state, there were very big pipelines that were there, and the pipelines were there from 1940, 1950, and there were huge leakages in those pipelines. So Texas was losing billion liters of water every month because of this particular leakages. And challenge is the Texas being very huge state, the problem was it was very difficult. So engineer used to get the call, and engineer used to drive for 5, 6, 7 hours to identify the leakages, and then they were able to fix those leakages. But by that time, there was a huge water loss that was happening. Now, if you look at it, how to solve this particular problem? So there were a couple of companies over there which were having IoT solution. And I think this solution was built in 2017 or 18. I think Omron was the one who built the IoT solution. Now the IoT solution that was built, they placed sensors, and this was like the first prototype that was done, wherein they placed sensors across all this particular pipeline. And the sensors used to gauge the water that is flowing. And if there is an anomaly, the machine learning algorithm was able to detect that an anomaly and predict that there might be a leakage that may be coming in over there. It would able to identify beforehand that there might be some leakage, that so there would be some small leakage, small drip that would start, and then there would be an anomaly that would be created. So the machine learning algorithm, the AI algorithm, would be able to predict that maybe in couple of hours, couple of days, there may be a huge leakage. So there was a proactive action that was taken by engineers to fix that. And by implementing this solution, Texas was able to save billions of liters of water every month. So if you look at it, at one point of time, we are seeing that we are talking about sci-fi things like autonomous car. At another area, which is very near to everyone's heart, which is water shortage, it is able to solve that particular problem. So AI today is not just talk of the town, but it is actually going to help in our social life as well, in our day-to-day life as well. Moving to the next chart, there are multiple drivers of AI. And as I was saying that this journey has not started today. This journey has started from 1940, where people started experimenting, people started researching on it, and there were a lot of algorithms that were already there. So if you think about all those algorithms, be it supervised, unsupervised, neural nets, or deep learning nets, all those algorithms or all those models, they were theoretically established way back. So we have all this gold mine of algorithm that was available. Now why we were not able to implement those? One of the major challenge that was preventing us from this particular using this algorithm was data. And today we are calling data as the oil, and every day we are churning petabytes of data, structured data, unstructured data, and all sorts of data. Now, as we have huge amount of data that is available, we are effectively able to use algorithms or model in order to solve those particular problems. Today as well, if you look at the statistics, only 20% of the data is usable. As we move ahead, what we call it as dark data. So 80% of data is dark data still today, and we are progressing. So if we look at how typically we have an AI ladder, there are 4 steps. One is data assimilation, identification of that particular data, identification of sources of data, identification where we can get data from, and that's the most important piece in the puzzle still today that we are missing. Which is the most relevant data sets that we would be looking for in order to build my model. The second is how I am going to organize my data. So the first step is for data analytics. Organization of data is also done today by data analytics. The third step is analysis of that particular data. Analysis means identifying that can this particular data be labeled, can there be some kind of an labeling that can be done on the data. And fourth step in the AI ladder is applying data model to those data sets. So when we talk about data and AI, these are the 4 important steps in the data area, which will help you to identify how we can start applying model. The problem today is we are jumping the guns and we are thinking that, yes, I will start using AI, I will start applying my AI models to the data. But I would say we have to distribute 4 steps and give equal proportion to them. So each ladder, the four steps in the ladder is going to contribute 25%. Gathering of data is having a 25% importance. Organizing the data is having 25% importance. Analyzing the data is having 25% importance. And putting models, what all models would be effective, is 25% important. So what is happening today is, as we are moving and we are progressing forward, everyone is coming up with something called as auto AI, which is based on my data set. I would be able to identify, and today we are still working with supervised data set or structured data set, wherein I would be able to identify that what kind of a model I need to apply on this particular data set. What are the hyper-tuning parameters that I need to apply on this particular data set? So those are the auto AI models that are already being created by all the big companies. The third important driver of AI is computing power, which was not there in our journey, wherein today we are moving from CPU to GPU, and we are going beyond GPU today as well, wherein my processing has become so much faster that I don't need to worry about anything. And with 5G coming in picture, things are going to substantially change with processing, and there would be a lot of computing that would be happening on the edge. So if you look at any architecture, there is an edge architecture. Now, what used to happen is I used to send all my data back. The data used to be on the cloud, and if I want to have my algorithms, it used to run on my backend system, and it used to tell me that this is the action that you need to take. So there was a huge amount of latency that was there. But today what is happening is the edge has become a highly computing device, and I can have my mini TensorFlow or my machine learning algorithms running over there, wherein it is able to take next best action. So I am saving on huge latency. So if you look at 5G, if you look at IoT, if you look at edge, these things are certainly going to make things more faster. The next best action is going to be more faster. So as we are talking about drivers, this is the third most important driver, wherein things have certainly changed, and be it cloud, be it your computing power, all those things are changed. So if I remember, when I got my first desktop, it was having a RAM of, or a memory of 64 MB. So today my mobile is running at 8 GB memory. So see the change. One is the computing power has become certainly cheap, and it is become pervasive. The next important thing is open source. So when we look at why everybody is talking about AI, one of the most important reason is there are so many open source technologies that are available that people don't need to worry about, or organization, enterprises, they don't need to worry about how I am going to pay for my licenses. What would be the charge that I am going to incur? If and this is the same case with startups. So if you look at it, most of the startups which are in the AI world, they have developed all their algorithms on open source. Now, deployment of those algorithms can definitely happen on cloud, different types of cloud, any cloud, be it AWS, IBM, Azure, and so on and so forth. But when they're trying to build their models, the models are always built on open source. So open source is, I would say, a game changer in one way or other. In this particular, all these four drivers are very important: algorithms, data, cloud, and open source. These four are the game changer in the AI world. Now, everybody would be thinking, why open source? So it provides, or it gives enterprises more flexibility as well as freedom to innovate. So I'm not relying on anyone. I can do research on my own. Now, if I want to contribute, I can always fork that particular open source module. At the same point of time, what I can do is I can do an upstream to that. I can contribute to that. So there is no dependency as such that would be there with respect to any organization, any enterprise that has a product. So I am not dependent. So enterprises have become independent. Startups have become independent. Individuals have become independent because they can write their own new modules. They are not relying that, okay, there is a feature or the product upgrade that's going to happen, and after that I can implement this particular feature. So that is a completely change in the strategy of an organization. Open source helps and improve and accelerate product development because as I said, I'm not dependent on anyone. Now, if I feel that this is the feature that I want to have, I can always implement that feature using open source. And if I feel that this is an important feature, I can always contribute back to the open source world. So I have core framework that was missing piece is ready today. And I just need to do customization on top of that. So if you look at it, every week there are huge number of AI models that are coming into picture. There are huge number of new algorithms, new libraries that are coming. You just need to use those libraries. You just need to implement those libraries, and it will try to solve a lot of your problem. So what open source has helped, it has helped to decentralization of talent, where I am not relying as an organization, as a startup, as an individual on anyone. If I have a problem, I can reach to anyone in the open source community, and then I can get answers from them. There are challenges leveraging open source technology as well, but I'm not going to focus upon that. But I would say, if we look at pros and cons, there are more advantage of open source technology, and that's where every big enterprise is banging on open source technology, be it Google's of the world, be it Amazon, be it Microsoft, be it IBM. Everybody are building their frameworks on this particular open source technology. So TensorFlow has become a de facto standard for deep learning. There are libraries for generative adversarial network, which are open source as well, which has been used in image processing, text processing, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think there is a question that Ramakrishna sir is asking. So there are different copyright model. So every open source goes with different licenses. So there is a licensing called as MIT. There is a licensing called as Apache 2. There is a license called as Linux Foundation license. And with this particular license, you can leverage the open source. And what they say is MIT is the easiest license to have. Apache 2 is again an easiest license to have, where there is no restriction. And most of this particular license, most of this open source product, be it TensorFlow, Caffe, PyTorch, and so on and so forth, they are either going with MIT or Apache, or they have both these particular licenses. So I don't need to worry about my copyright model. I don't need to worry about anything. Absolutely. I think there is another question from Chandan Singh. Is it safe to code with open source platform? Absolutely. There is no harm to use open source platform. We are using open source platform. So I am building something in IBM as a part of my work, engineering work, and we are using open source. IBM acquired Red Hat, and it is completely an open source company. So a lot of things in open source, be it Linux, be it Eclipse, be it any other product, they are open sources. So there is no way, it's very safe to use open source. So typically people are worried about if there are going to be some leaks in the code, or if there are some kind of an vulnerabilities, is there security aspect that is being compromised. So all these things are taken care by the open source community. So like whenever there is a graduation cycle for open source, and once the product is mature, then only it gets certified as Apache 2, where there are multiple scans that are run. There are vulnerability scans that are run on this particular open source platform. And I am talking about matured open source platform. Next question from Ramakrishna sir is forking not a problem for code maintenance and hence customer confidence? Absolutely not. If I fork the code, and if there and if I'm doing customization, what typically happens today is I have APIs that are available. I can use those APIs, and if there is any change in that code, I can definitely use my DevOps pipeline in order to leverage the changes in the code to get incorporated in my new release. So CI/CD, which we call it like continuous integration, continuous development, DevOps pieces, where we are using Jenkins, Travis as a part of our pipeline. If we use all those and if we use open source, there is no problem. So today we are moving from, if we look from that particular perspective, we are moving from the actual code repos to a containerized stuff, or we are moving to a Dockerized stuff where these images are available, and I just need to use that image. Even like these images are available on something like Quay.io, Operator Hub, and I can readily use these particular images. So there is no problem with that. Next question is, do we need to give credit or acknowledge the use of open source software in our product, which is based on open source? Yes, we are, as a guidelines, we have to, but it should not come in your in your product front page. You can have that as a part of your code stuff, that we are using this kind of a product and we acknowledge using this particular product, and these are the licensing stuff that are happening with this particular open source. So there is no issue for the open source community to gain a credit, because it's like an open world wherein, like, I would say it is a symbiotic relationship where you are using them and they get fame. So most of you are using React today. React, I think most of you would have heard about the MEAN stack, which was a mean stack, MEAN, which was Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node. Today, from that, we have moved to MERN, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node. So React was a build that was done by Facebook, and they have released this as an open source product. Now what has happened is React is top of the town. Every organization is using React. One of the reason is it is very scalable, it is very flexible. I won't say it is easy, but once you understand it, the learning curve is very small, and it is easily able to consume your APIs, be it from Node, be it your REST APIs, be it your JSON APIs. So it has become de facto standards for startup to use React, and it can very well call your data science APIs as well. So moving on to the next slide, I'm just being cognizant about time. Saket, let me know when you want me to stop. I can stop at any point of time. Just give me a hint, or I can keep on continuing.
And that is great, sir. Your session is looking great, because in between only we are also handling question answer session. So you can carry on, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, maybe if everyone is fine, I'll maybe take 10 minutes more.
Yeah, sir. Yes, sir. 5 to 10 minutes is okay. Yes, sir.
Sure. And if you have questions after this as well, like maybe anyone can reach back to me.
Yeah, that would be great for participants.
So open source, let's talk about the open source from an AI perspective. So if we look at open source framework for AI, they are like, as I said, two-way street. It makes AI accessible to everyone, and companies in turn benefit from a community of contributing, helping accelerate its AI research. And again, I'm going to reiterate, and I'm going to talk about TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is a library that is being developed by Google and being used by everyone and anyone. When we are trying to build your deep learning models, when you are trying to build your neural net models. everybody first thing that comes to mind is TensorFlow libraries. So there is like Keras, Pandas, all those are like more or less from a classification algorithm perspective or supervised learning perspective. But if you move to deep learning or neural net, TensorFlow is the library. And there, if you see the community of TensorFlow, you would be quite astonished. There is a huge community of TensorFlow. There's a huge contribution that is happening over there. And that's why I am calling it as a two-way street, where the organizations are having access, or the enterprise who is leveraging this particular TensorFlow don't have access only to the product engineers of a specific product, but they have access to entire world to solve their problem. So they get into an issue and they can like maybe post that particular question in forum, and there is a world to answer that particular question. At the same point of time, there is a huge contribution that is happening to all this open source community, because people are learning, everybody is learning, everybody is saying that I am getting a chance to contribute, I am getting a chance to learn. Another question, I think what I am looking at, is it risky to take open source code libraries from GitHub without seeking the services of proactive cyber attackers to check for security flaw? So as I was saying, most of these softwares or most of this open source software, they have done all the security tests. So typically what we do is the first and most important test is VA, what we called as vulnerability in any software, where there can be some kind of an attack that may happen to your software. So that thing is taken care by most of the open source, I would say mature or graduated open source product. That is one. Second, today we are moving from a world of having a legacy code or having a code repo to a containerized image stuff. So what we are doing is, if I am bundling that particular open source project or that particular source code as a part of my image or a container, and if I am going to deploy that image or a container on my cloud, what I am doing is I am trying to restrict attack by maybe 2 or 3 times. That is one. Second, all the graduated open source, they are very well security tested. Trust me, they are very well security tested. So be it like something like TensorFlow, be it Eclipse platform like EclipseJ, all these are very well tested. So you won't be able to find that there are huge amount of vulnerabilities. Now, specific to your application, if there is some kind of an SPI or a PI, which is like a sensitive personal information or personal information, then you may have to take care of it, but it is application specific. So you have to take care of all those things, that you are properly encrypting that particular information, because most of these AI libraries, they are playing on data. And if you are able to morph the data, or if you are able to hide the data that is sensitive or that is SPI, which is sensitive personal information, there is as such no issues from models. Because typically what happens is, you are using these particular models or libraries in order to build your models. So when you are building the AI models, what is happening is, you are first training, you are using your models on the training data. So at that point of time, you have to take care that SPI, PI information is not part of your data set. That thing you have to take care. So there are multiple products. If you are thinking from a security perspective, there is something called as ZAP, which is a vulnerability advisor tool. There is something called as OWASP, which is again a licensing tool to identify are there any licenses problem in your code, in your open source. So there are multiple tools which you have to run. There is no way that you can escape from that. You have to run those tools in order to make sure when you are using your code along with the open source, it is foolproof. But if you think from just an graduated open source perspective, I would say it is 95 to 99% foolproof from a security perspective. So I just want to like maybe give you an analogy of how the industry is moving from an industrial perspective, how we are moving ahead with open source. So if you look at the right top corner, the first, and this is pertaining to AI only. So the y-axis is how industry is adopting, and x-axis is the market strength. And if you look at it, open source framework today are being adopted by industry as well, and they have become strength of the market. And there are some frameworks which are proprietary frameworks, but the open source framework has become talk of the town. So when I'm referring to edge computing, or when I'm referring to the facial recognition pieces, I'm referring to the one that are proprietary in nature. But if you compare your open source framework, they are the most used frameworks today. Again, I'm talking again and again about TensorFlow because as I said, that is a talk of the town. So if you look at it, and to answer some of the question that came, this is being used by I would say anyone and everyone in the world. I'm not able to see name of IBM, but we are using TensorFlow as well as a part of our AI model. We have something called as AI 360, which is an explainability model, which uses TensorFlow as well. So if you look from that particular perspective, how widely it is getting adopted, and this is very small list, but if you look at it, all these players are very big, be it Uber, be it Airbnb, be it Google, be it Qualcomm, be it Intel. These are very, very big name in the industry who are using these open source technologies. To be specific, TensorFlow. I know we are way ahead of the time, so I'll take a pause over here. There are a couple of slides. I'll definitely share this as well. But I'll take a pause, and if there are any further questions, maybe we can give 5 minutes for the question and answers. I know we are way delaying from a time perspective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We will take 2-3 minutes. Although,
Sure.
However, we were having question and answer during the session also. But if any of you have some doubts, some clarifications, we could entertain it now.
This is Ramki here.
Yes, sir.
You are all along talking about TensorFlow.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying TensorFlow is completely occupied the space with no competition, or
No,
especially coming from the fact that is coming from the Google staple,
Mm-hmm.
IBM has given up everything?
No. So everyone is using TensorFlow as the base. So what is happening at this point of time? People are using TensorFlow as the base platform. Nobody has given up, but they are leveraging TensorFlow in their own products. So be it IBM, be it Microsoft, be it AWS, what is happening today is TensorFlow is part of the product package. So even IBM uses TensorFlow. As I was saying, we have a product called as Cloud Pak for data. And in that particular product, we have different pieces. One of the piece is OpenScale AI. And then in that we have something called as AI explainability, which is able to explain that if you are building some model, that why this particular model on a specific data set has this specific behavior. And in this we are using TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is being used as a core in most of the products. That's where I was coming from. People are building things on TensorFlow.
Did it originally come from University of Toronto?
It started from University of Toronto, then Google graduated it, but yes, it started from there.
Any further questions, participants?
This is what we called as a Center for Open Source Data and AI Technologies. This is specific to IBM. We call this as a Codite, wherein like we have something called as model asset exchange, and then if you look at it, everything from left to right is completely open source, starting from Jupyter Labs, starting from Pandas, scikit-learn. For deploying model, we are using MLeap as a platform, which is again built on open source. So we are using Keras TensorFlow as our deep learning platform. So if anyone wants to like maybe contribute over here, this is available. This is called as a Codite platform, which is an open source technology platform from IBM standpoint. There is a huge contribution that is happening over here, and everyone is welcome to contribute to this particular program. Again, like this is Acumus AI open source framework. I don't want to get into more detail because this is a complex framework. It's going to take some time. But again, this is one of the open source AI framework which can be used for creation or onboarding of your data models, enhancing your data models with application data set. At the same point of time, what you can do is if you have a model, you can use this particular framework in order to have marketplace, and at the same point of time you can have your Dockerized image or Docker containers as a part of executable target environment. So this is another framework. So this was the last slide that I was having. Again, I am not going into detail about this particular framework because it's a huge topic within itself. That's all from my side, Aditya sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Aditya,
much.
Amol, since you're concluding it, I want to give a small tidbit.
Sure.
You know,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
in 2003, CDAX, one of the major initiative in open source, was jointly with IBM. Shankar was the CEO, and in Bombay we inaugurated a CDAC IBM, the so-called FOSS center at Mumbai, CDAC Mumbai.
Oh wow!
Okay,
So
yeah.
That's very good to know.
This journey is very old and strong. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal-
Absolutely.
Thank
Good
you
to know, sir.
for your, yeah.
Okay, so just a thank you note, and I really feel very insightful. Your talk was really a good baseline for starting our webinar series. The way you started with the timeline, it was just awesome, and then you quickly told us the drivers of AI. So this is really a ideal speech we could have to inaugurate our webinar series, and very informative, sir. Thank you very much. And the participants, if you have any questions, we would share the details, and PPT and recording would be on our official webpage, so you could access there also. Thank you very much, Amol sir. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you,
Amol, for your nice talk today, and thank you the participants, all the participants for joining with us. And this is the first of the in the series, and we are going to come 13 more. Tomorrow we are going to have the same new expert with a new expert. So I welcome all of you. Expect to come for the next seminar tomorrow also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Saket.
Thank you, sir.
Have a
Thank you,
good day.
participants.
Yep. Thanks, Aditya,
Tomorrow-
sir. Yep.
Tomorrow we will have Jigar sir with us from NVIDIA on the topic New Era of Computing, GPUs, Data Center to Edge. So we'll connect at 10:45 tomorrow also. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Amol sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Ramki sir, for your kind lot of making this very, very energetic talk. So thank you very much, sir.